Okay, back, boys and girls, for the second half hour. I can't wait to get back to ISIS, the CIA, and the Vatican connection, and to see exactly what Bill has to say. I don't know about you. I could talk all afternoon, as you know, but I know that you want to listen to this. So let me make way for Bill Hughes.
Bill, let's do it.
Let's go. Revelation 17, Danny, verse 2, it says that this apostate church is connected to the kings of the earth. And the kings of the earth, Danny, as we see on the slide, we're talking about the movers and shakers in political affairs in our world. You've got on our slide, you've got John Boehner there, the Speaker of the House. You've got Joseph Biden, the Vice President of the United States, listening with intensity their boss.
This is an open session of Congress, and the first time the Pope of Rome has ever addressed Congress in session, correct?
Absolutely.
So this is unprecedented.
Absolutely it was, Danny. And that, of course, took place a little over 2 months ago. Danny, the Bible says that the kings of the earth have committed fornication with this apostate church. Verse 18 of the same chapter, Danny, goes one step further. Revelation 17:18 says, "The woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth."
So it's not just the United States we're seeing here, Bill, on these slides. Comment on this. What are you seeing here with these kings of the earth? These are world leaders.
Absolutely, Danny. Danny, Revelation 17:18, in light of what Peter said in our opening verse, we have a sure word of prophecy that shines as a light in a dark place. So, Danny, it's only through Bible prophecy that we can get an accurate view of world events. Because, Danny, world events would tell us that the movers and shakers are the presidents and leaders of our world. But Revelation 17 rips the mask off, Danny, and says, no, the rulers of the world are being controlled and told what to do by this apostate church.
Repeat that. That's a very important point.
Danny, the leaders of our world are told what to do by this apostate church.
Now, can you prove that today?
There is so much proof that all the leaders of the world do the bidding of this apostate church.
You know, if we look at a few slides here, we see Pope Francis. Sometimes I refer to him as the Sister Teresa of the papacy. This man who appears very kind and washing the feet of people, you know, as he's out there in the crowds and moving throughout the earth, taking his time to hold the little babies in his arm, showing how benevolent he is, taking the name from Francis of Assisi. He's chumming up, you know, with these world leaders here, and even with religious leaders.
Absolutely, Danny. Absolutely. Danny, the fact of the matter is, and of course, the apostate church that we're looking at it here in Revelation 17, of whom all the reformers agreed, is the Roman Catholic Church. And all the reformers declared that truth. Tragically, Danny, Protestants today, apostate Protestants, evangelicals, in fact, every religious group, Danny, every church in the world today refuses to declare who Babylon the Great is in Revelation 17.
It's like the reformers had it right, but today it's like people are oblivious that was even history. They're offended when you speak this way to tie the Pope of Rome at all to the Antichrist.
Well, Danny, it's fascinating. You know, in fact, I was reading that in your book just this afternoon. Danny, you had 2 Jesuit priests who came along toward the end of the 16th century. And Danny, Rome was desperate to get the attention of the religious world off of them as the Antichrist power. So along came 2 Jesuit priests who In fact, the Jesuit order, Danny, itself was raised up to destroy the Protestant Reformation and to reestablish the power of the papacy. So, Danny, these two Jesuit priests come along, Alcazar and Ribera, and they point all churches in two opposite directions.
Yes.
Where they said all prophecy was either fulfilled by the first century, or the futurist view said all prophecy will be fulfilled in the future.
Thereby putting the Antichrist into the future.
Absolutely.
And getting the eyes off Rome that he already doth exist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Danny, we see how effectively those two Jesuits, Alcazar and Ribera, how effectively and how much those ideas have infiltrated into the churches of today. So,
absolutely.
But Danny, Revelation 17 is crystal clear that the papacy, the great whore, reigns over the kings of the earth. As we saw in the slides, they control Barack Obama. He's a king of the earth, Danny. Mm-hmm. He's probably the most powerful king on the earth. The Bible says that the papacy tells Barack Obama what to do. In fact, Danny, in your book, The Final Inquisition, notice this, a very unknown fact about the administration of Barack Obama. On page 72 of your book, you say, yes, President Barack Obama is absolutely right. Change is coming, especially when we consider that many of his appointees are Jesuit trained. Mm-hmm. For example, his chief speechwriter, John Favre, Jesuit trained. His senior military and foreign policy advisor, J. Scott Gratian, Jesuit trained. His deputy communications director, Dan Pfeiffer, Jesuit trained. His Chicago mentor, Gregory Galuzzo, a former Jesuit priest, Jesuit trained. Danny, Leon Panetta, the original man who ran the CIA that we're going to look at here momentarily, Jesuit trained. So Danny, we see just with the current president the incredible influence that is brought to bear on this king of the earth, as Revelation 17 clearly outlines.
The language that the Bible uses too, that they have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. This is an illicit relationship between a religious leader and world leaders. I mean, many people suspect the President of the United States with his sympathies to the Muslim people. You know, that you don't hear him defending the Christians. It's more time even on, I watched his speech last night at the Oval Office talking about these recent, killings in San Bernardino. I heard him talking about our outlook towards Muslims. I have Muslims that are friends. I got that. And they say that this ISIS is manufactured. The Muslims are telling me that don't agree with ISIS by any means and said this is not the way we believe, that this is manufactured. And I was sitting in a sauna one day and I was speaking to a man, and he went to the University of Jerusalem. He went to school there. He learned Arabic, and we were talking, and he says it's manufactured. And I said, do you think it's connected to the Vatican at all? And you know what? We had quite a conversation, Bill. We had quite a conversation, and I want you to continue because I am anxious to hear what you have to say in regards to CIA, ISIS, and the Vatican. And is there a link between these three?
Danny, we'll definitely get there. We'll definitely show the connection between ISIS, the CIA, and the papacy.
Yes.
No doubt about it. But Danny, Revelation 17 and 18 brings out very clearly that not only does the papacy control the kings of the earth, but Revelation 17:5, Danny, says that Babylon the Great, this woman, has on her forehead that name, and she's the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So, Danny, if Rome is the great whore, then the churches that are following in her footsteps today are her harlot daughters.
Right. And I know who you're referring to, apostate Protestantism.
Absolutely.
Is there any indication that apostate Protestantism is joining once again with the Roman power? And one of the things that I want to bring to light here is that Joel Osteen, this year he met with the Pope, or this 2014, correct?
Yes.
He met with the Pope Francis at the Vatican, and it always amazed me because here's this Protestant evangelical, well known on America, and packs 50,000 people a week into his stadium for his worship service.
Right.
Travels to Rome and meets with the man of sin who has 100,000 people in St. Peter's Basilica, and they sit there and they begin to talk how they can converge and work as one.
Absolutely, Danny. Danny, we've seen Joel Osteen do it. Of course, we had the episode with Kenneth Copeland and Tony Palmer. So,
Yes.
Danny, we see the Pentecostal, the evangelical, the apostate Protestant churches of today, they are uniting together with Rome with an agenda, Danny,
Yes.
to usher in a one world church, one world religion that will bring all the world into corrupt religious unity with the Vatican.
And so God has a people on this earth that he has given a message, I always say in Revelation 14, to meet the crisis in Revelation 13, where all the world's wondering after the beast. God has his people in position that are to sound the most solemn message ever entrusted to mortal man, and that's the three angels' messages of
Amen.
Revelation 14, to expose this power. What we are doing today is in line with the Bible. Bill.
Absolutely.
We are to unmask this power. So as we look at this terror that's coming here in America now, I want to move on now because this hour is going to go fast, but I want you to talk about this. This is amazing. CIA contractor, we fabricated ISIS. This is a completely fabricated enemy. The funding is completely from the United States and its allies. And for people to think that this enemy is something that needs to be attacked in Syria or Iraq is a farce, because obviously this is something that we created. A contractor, Stephen Kelly, and then below it, it says, suspicions run deep in Iraq that CIA and ISIS are united. The New York Times, September 20th, 2014, and here's the article.
Yes.
It's conspiracy theorists. I always laugh at that, and so do you. Revelation chapter 13, Revelation 17, the Bible's filled with exposing and addressing the fact that there is a conspiracy.
Absolutely, Danny. Danny, Webster's dictionary says that a conspiracy is two or more people or groups united together with a sinister purpose. Now, Danny, we've looked in Revelation 17. We've got the great whore, the papal power. We have the kings of the earth. Danny, that's a conspiracy right there. Revelation 17:5, you've got the mother of harlots.
Yes.
That's three powers now, Danny, in Revelation 17, united together for a sinister purpose. And then, of course, Revelation 18, verse 3 and verses 15 to 18 identifies a fourth entity, and those are the merchants of the earth, the great bankers, the great business people of the world. So, Danny, for somebody to say that conspiracy is a theory, Danny, they're dead wrong. Conspiracy is not a theory, friend. It's a fact.
Yes.
And Revelation 17 and 18 says so. Now, Danny, this article that you're showing from the New York Times, connecting the CIA and ISIS. Danny, I want to take it one step closer to home because, Danny, in our look at Revelation 17, we are saying to our viewers, we're not pointing to ISIS as the great enemy of mankind. We are saying that it's the papacy that is the great enemy of every person on this planet. And Danny, we're also saying here today, and we're going to see that right now, that the CIA, number one, was a creation of the Vatican. And number two, that ISIS was a creation of the CIA.
That's amazing.
Now, Danny, let's go back. Let's go back. Number one, Danny, the CIA originated in the 1940s. The CIA originally was called the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services. It was started, Danny, by a man named Wild Bill Donovan. Donovan, Danny, was a Knight of Malta. Now, Danny, a Knight of Malta is somebody who has surrendered their life to the authority of the Pope, and they have said they will do whatever the Pope desires. Danny, Bill Donovan was such a man. He was given the cross of Saint Sylvester right about 1944 by Pope Pius XII. And Pope Pius XII said, Bill, you are to use the OSS, which then spawned into the CIA. He said, you are to use this organization to stop the spread of communism throughout the world. Okay? So that's what Donovan did. Well, Danny, not only did Donovan create the Central Intelligence Agency, which I, Danny, call the Catholic Intelligence Agency. The reason why Donovan was a Catholic, Allen Dulles, the first director of the CIA, he was a member of the CFR, which is a front for the Catholic Church. James Angleton, another devout Catholic. Paul Helliwell, another Roman Catholic. Danny, the creators of the CIA were all Roman Catholics. And Danny, the major people, the largest group of people that manned the CIA were trained at Boston College, Fordham, Georgetown, the preeminent Catholic Jesuit universities in the northeastern part of America, Danny. Those are the predominant men that are involved in the Central Intelligence Agency.
You said, I asked you the question that any country wants to have intelligence. They want to know what's going on to protect themselves. And you made the comment, that's why we had the FBI. So the CIA, it looks like it's the United States protecting us, but that's not the case.
Danny, the Central Intelligence Agency is much like the Federal Reserve Bank that was created in our modern times about 100 years ago during the time of Woodrow Wilson. Danny, the Federal Reserve Bank is not a United States entity. Danny, it was funded by the Rothschild family who worked for the Jesuit order. It is not a U.S. entity.
Not part of the federal government in any way.
It's not a part of the federal government at all. In fact, Danny, as you trace the history of the Federal Reserve System through American history, it has only created depressions, inflation, raised taxes in the last 100 years. Danny, and it is because of the Federal Reserve System today that America is the greatest debtor nation on the face of the earth. That's why. So, but Danny, getting back to the CIA, At the end of World War II, Danny, the Russians, they were trying to spread the world with communism. In fact, Danny, before World War II, we always called Russia, Russia. But after that, at the end of World War II, their name was changed, and it became the USSR, meaning the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Danny, Russia, the USSR, they went all over the world spreading communism. Well, the Catholic Intelligence Agency was raised up to stop communism. That's what it was raised up for, Danny. And in this book, Operation Gladio, written by a devout Roman Catholic, Paul Williams, and we'll see a slide on this in a little while. But Danny, he shows that the Catholic Intelligence Agency fed, housed, armed, equipped people all over Europe, so that if the Soviet Union came in and tried to take it over for communism, all of these people that the Catholic Intelligence Agency had trained, they would be ready to oppose the communist invasion. Well, Danny, you come down to the 1970s, the late 1970s. There was a pro-Western leader that was put in place in Afghanistan. His name was Abdullah Aziz. Danny, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. A fact of history, late 1979 into 1980. Well, Danny, the Catholic Intelligence Agency had to train Muslims. And so, Danny, there were hundreds of terrorist organizations that were created in the early 1980s by the Catholic Intelligence Agency to fight the Russians in Afghanistan. Danny, one of the groups that was created by the Catholic Intelligence Agency was called Al-Qaeda.
We've heard that name before.
Danny, we've heard that name for a long, long time
Yes.
now. And Danny, one of the offshoot groups that splintered off from Al-Qaeda was ISIS.
Right.
Danny, Al-Qaeda was created, funded, armed, housed, fed by the Catholic Intelligence Agency. ISIS, Danny, same thing.
You know, I just sent out in my Elijah prophecy this week, it was ISIS and gun control. So we got a common villain out there now, right? And it's bringing people together. And I showed in the Elijah prophecy, I gave a link to this article in the New York, Times, but I also gave a link to the origin of ISIS, and they were saying exactly what you're saying. But what amazed me so much, Bill, as I was watching the origin of ISIS, was that as we left Iraq, there was millions of dollars of military vehicles, weapons, and ISIS went in and has taken over these insurgents that we were.
Yeah, we basically, I have to cut it off there, so I only have 5 seconds. We funded ISIS, plain and simple. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.